with the 3 News Now Weather Alert Team.
As colder temperatures arrive, people have been speculating since fall began what this winter will bring.
Yeah, they certainly have. In fact, some turned to a source with 2 centuries of weather predictions, hoping to learn what to expect. Meteorologist Audra Moore spoke to the editor of the Farmer's Almanac, and if you hate winter, you may not want to hear what he expects.
Yeah, guys, if you enjoy reading the Farmer's Almanac, by now you've likely pored over the 2019 edition that contains their winter outlook. What many don't know is the process to put it all together. Editor of the 2019 Farmer's Almanac, Peter Geiger, explains how they come up with the forecast.
We use a mathematical formula that was developed in the early 1800s, and we've been doing it now for 200 years, and only 7 people have been doing it over the 200 years.
The Farmer's Almanac covers more than just this upcoming winter.
The formula is applied to sunspot activity, planet positions, the effect that the moon has on the Earth, and that has allowed us to do our weather 2 years in advance.
As for the actual forecast for our area, well, according to the Farmer's Almanac, it's time to get a good winter coat.
This particular winter looks frigid, not just for you, but I think all the way down to Louisiana. It's just the central part of the country is just going to get the cold blast, and it's going to be there for quite a while.
3 News Now meteorologist Ryan McPike remembers waiting anxiously to see the Farmer's Almanac each year when he was a kid.
As a weather geek, I used to go to the grocery store a lot with my parents, and every time one of these guys would come out, I would just go nuts looking for it.
People still enjoy the information found in the almanac, but McPike knows it's not an end-all, be-all forecast.
Now that I'm a full-fledged meteorologist with a degree and a college education, like I said, it's still fun to look at this, but believe me, there's a lot more science, at least for this guy, that goes into those long-range forecasts.
And along with the winter forecast, the Farmer's Almanac also includes tips about gardening and weather folklore.
That is some great insight, Audra. Well, there is no short supply of winter forecast. Another widely looked at outlook comes from the Climate Prediction Center, a relative of the National Weather Service and NOAA. Their meteorologists believe the wetter weather will stay to our south this winter, with drier weather over the Great Lakes region, which leaves the Heartland region with an equal chance for above or below average precipitation.
The one thing that the Climate Prediction Center is a little more confident in is that there's a slightly better chance for warmer than normal conditions through this winter. The downside is we're in Nebraska and Iowa. It's going to be cold regardless.
All right, but they do believe the best chance for warmer weather will be in the Pacific Northwest, with the southeast likely being closer to average.
You've heard from NOAA what their outlook is for the winter season, but now we've put our own forecast together, Ryan McPike and I, and here's the latest on what key factors that we're looking at for this upcoming winter season.
Yeah, and if you pay attention to this, you're probably familiar not only with NOAA's forecast, or other media outlets might have thrown their hat in the ring there as well. A lot of times you'll hear terms like La Nina or El Nino, and this season, at least so far, we're trying to develop into a little bit of a weak El Nino, and we'll kind of break down what that's meant for our winters here coming up. But it's weak, but at least it's leaning that way at the current time here.
It certainly is, and that will have a huge impact not only on temperatures, but obviously on the snowfall for the season. And we've already seen multiple Arctic outbreaks across the area, and it's not even officially winter yet. So that's a major concern too,
right?
When you look at the overall pattern, and where some are saying that it's going to be above average for this upcoming winter season. We're not leaning in that direction.
No, it's been a very cold start to the season so far, and with that, we've already had snow, accumulating snow in October and so far through November. So that has to be thrown into the mix as well. And the other wild card with snow is, how, will we get more big storms? How deep into the season is this going to go? Are we going to still be accumulating in March and April? And that all gets factored in our forecast as well.
It certainly does. So the first one we're going to start off with is El Nino. So the current setup usually means that you would see warmer than normal temperatures back to the north, which would include our area, and then the wet conditions and possibly even cool for the southeast. But right now, the overall trend, and that's kind of where NOAA has been sort of banking on the overall kind of typical setup. But we've already seen a lot of changes in the overall pattern. Now, when it comes to putting our forecast together, we really don't start fine-tuning it until October and and even November. And the main reason why is because the overall trend doesn't start setting up until that time frame, which will carry us not only through the winter, but even into next year.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there's some other factors too outside of that, but kind of focusing on what we would typically expect here. Again, the central South Pacific, where you see the yellow area, those would be the above normal temperatures. That's the El Nino, and you can even see that up from Baja, California, off the west coast of the United States. So it's leaning that way, but they're not real deep yellows, kind of a weak El Nino developing here.
And that's the case. And so this is really an interesting kind of telltale
Yes, it is.
El Nino strength versus the snow. Right. And the last really El Nino event, we've been in a neutral pattern right now out in the Pacific Ocean. Strong was back in 2015, 2016, 27 inches, which was actually closer to normal for our area. But that's when we had that December snowfall, kind of Christmas Eve, and brought in several inches of snow.
Yeah, and the moderate one on here, a lot of us, if you've lived here for a while, 09, 2010, one of the worst winters I've ever seen in my life in the Midwest or the central part of the United States. That was a moderate. 47.6 at the airport. Parts of the city had over 60 inches of snow. The reason I point that out is 09, the fall season started very similar to what we have this year. Now, the difference is these weak El Ninos, they're kind of all over the board from 13 on the low end to a little above normal at 30 inches. So again, another challenge with our forecast here.
And it is, and that's one of the reasons why the National Weather Service has kind of been leaning with really no true signal or sign as to whether we'll be above or below on the overall totals. But when you look at the last 5 years, this was really just... I think everybody's been sort of lulled into a false sense that, hey, our winters aren't too bad here. We don't really get a whole lot of snow. This isn't typical. The last really more seasonable snowfall totals that we saw were back in 2015, 2016, again, 27 inches there, but way below average here for the last several years. We think it's going to be a totally different situation. And here's just breaking down what we saw this past winter season. We were all over the place across eastern Nebraska.
Yeah, really. 17 at the airport, and then Valley, 24, so that range, and our prediction last year really fell right in that category, so that was good. And then look at this, though. Norfolk was kind of on the southwest end of that real active weather pattern that brought a lot of snow from there up to like Sioux City and Sioux Falls last year.
And even blizzards too, the Norfolk area dealt with. So when we look at the overall average amounts of snowfall that we see throughout the winter season, really the highest amounts collect during December, January, and February. But I don't anticipate that it's going to be typical from that regard of the snowfall. The bigger issue, I think, is going to come towards the tail end of our winter season in March and April, where we could end up with some bigger snowfall totals for us.
Yeah, and we're already above normal here to start off the season. So as we kind of go through, this is what we're thinking. December, we're thinking probably colder than normal. We're going to continue that with above normal snow at least as we head through the next month.
Yeah, so this yellow band right here gives us the averages. So again, as you look at December, January, and February, notice that while January and February are going to be below average on our snow totals, temperatures are either average or colder than normal. So looking at the overall forecast, what we're kind of saying for this upcoming season, we've already seen a lot of cold air, and I think it's going to be colder than normal on the temperatures.
I think so too, and we've agreed that at least we're probably talking about more snow than a lot of those previous years. They can add or slightly above normal. The wild card, though, would maybe take us a little bit above this as well.
Yeah, so something we'll be watching very, very closely as we go into the rest of the winter season. So whether the winter brings below average or above average temperatures, we all know that there will be some cold or at least extreme cold snaps mixed in. To dress for a cold day, make sure your outfit includes a warm hat, gloves, and waterproof boots.
And if you need to be out in the extreme cold, add a face mask and have at least 3 layers under your coat. Coming up after the break, we'll not only get you and your family ready for the cold, but also your car and explain how you can help in the fight against potholes.